Okay. Welcome to AEC Stories. This is former SM3 Dempsey of the USS Mount Hood. And today we've got a special podcast. I've got a signalman from many moons before I was a signalman who actually even hung out with John Wayne and has many other great stories. So today we've got Jerry Bishop. How are you today, Jerry?
Just fine, sir. How about yourself?
Good. And I'm so happy to have you on here because I haven't had anybody, and I'm not picking on your age because it's awesome because I want to get something this good. Because after I keep talking to my shipmates, it's the same old story. So I need a new story. So how did you end up joining the Navy? How'd that come about for you?
Oh, goodness. Ever since I was a kid, I dreamed of joining the Navy. And as soon as I was able to do it, I enlisted. I even quit high school to join the Navy. I was going to burn out in a little Yukon town I was growing up in and just kind of wanted to get out there and see the world. My dad told me he'd certainly sign up for me if I'd promise him I'd get my GED. And I got that the first year. I was kind of proud to call him and tell him I did what he asked me to do.
Oh, wow. So what year was this that you were going into the Navy?
I joined in October of 1961 and went through boot camp and met my ship in February of 1962 in Philippine Islands. That's where I boarded to St. Paul and fell in love with her then and still do, still love her.
Oh, wow. So you were basically going in the Navy probably about 7 years before I was born. I was born in 68. Did they have an A school for signalmen or was that did you have to strike for signalmen back then?
Yeah, I had to strike for it in those days because I'd quit high school. They wouldn't send me to an A school. I did good test scores and everything, but I guess they needed more bosun's mates, so they sent me out to the fleet. I was on the deck force for the 4th Division for about 6 months. And one of my friends that was in boot camp struck up to the signalman a couple months before that. And I used to go up there and sit with him and BS with the signalman and look at all the flags and stuff. And I said, man, this is for me. So I struck for signalman, filled out my correspondence course, and then they transferred me up to a signal bridge. That's the best thing I ever did.
One of the best jobs in the Navy, honestly. I mean, that's...
Yeah, really it is. I mean, you're aware of everything that's going on, whether it's night or day. If you're on a bridge, in those days we kept logs of where the ship was. We had like I can't remember the name of it, like
mow board. Well, there's the board on the bridge, the mow board, right? Yeah,
yeah, the mow board. We had to keep contact of all the ships at night, and that got a little difficult sometimes, but it was always a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so I know the lead in, I saw everyone's like, this guy was hanging out with John Wayne. Were they making a movie on your ship or something? And John Wayne was there?
Yeah, the USS St. Paul played the old swayback in the movie In Harm's Way. And we picked him up. We sailed up to Seattle, Washington, and picked them up. They brought all their equipment on board, and almost all that equipment, it seemed like, went up on the signal bridge. The signal bridge was kind of messy during that transition, and that's where John Wayne hung out on the signal bridge when they did most of the filming on the next deck up, which was the the captain's quarters. Not quarters, the bridge, captain's bridge, where they did most of the filming. So when they were hanging out, he'd stay down there on the signal bridge and just kind of talk to us signalmen and look out to sea. He loved ships and he loved to look out at sea.
Who could resist the signal bridge? I mean, if I was a guest and I was a civilian, I'd find my way to the signal bridge. I wouldn't be hanging down and, I'm no offense to you snipes, but I wouldn't be hanging out in the engine room. I would definitely be on the fresh air on the top of the ship, right? I mean, that's the place to be.
Yeah, you know everything that's going on. Nice and fresh and clean air. And Signalman's coffee was there. He loved coffee. He'd drink that coffee down. One thing about Mr. Wayne's, he was always drinking coffee and always smoking a cigarette. He smoked Camel cigarettes and, unfiltered Camels. And one after another, he would light one after another.
Oh, my goodness.
We were standing up there Yeah, we were standing on a bridge one day, and I always hung out on the starboard side of this bridge because that's where you could see most everything that was going on. We were steaming with a ship that was in the movie, the USS Phillips, DD 498, I believe it was. And it was off the starboard side of us most of the time. And I always stood over there to watch it and watch them film. And Mr. Wayne come up there one day and was standing next to me. And he offered me a cigarette. And I'm kind of took me by surprise, you know. Well, I went, no, thank you, sir. I don't smoke Camels. And so he put it back in. I was smoking Marlboros or Winston at that time. And when I got a little bit older, I'm thinking, how silly was I not to take that cigarette and keep it because I could have it mounted.
Everybody would be like, well, you're making up that story. That's not John Wayne's cigarette. You could just see that one. This was a pair of shoes. You know, I mean, back then it was hard to, I guess, illustrate. Right now we've got Instagram and people taking pictures of every event happening in their life. But, you know, you grew up in a time where the computers weren't there and you went to sea and you couldn't talk to your loved ones unless you pulled into a port and paid $8 a minute on a phone call long distance, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
How it was back then. So how long were you in?
Oh, I was with the St. Paul for 4 years, and then I got off the ship and went out in civilian life, and I kind of intended to go back in on the ship before my 3 months was up, but I met this young girl and kind of fell in love with her, and that kind of made me forget about the Navy. However, in 1981, a lot of years later, a young recruiter showed up to my door and come in there and started telling me sea stories. And we started talking. About 3 or 4 hours later, I had my right hand in the air, and I'd solemnly swear. So that was reserves. I stayed in reserves for another 14 years before I got out.
Oh, wow. So he showed up like a very good recruiter, like a friggin' dictionary salesman or whatever. He was ready to get you back in.
Yeah. Plus he had a 6-pack or 12-pack of Coors Light too. So that helped a lot.
Those are some good tactics. He must have went to a very good sales training. I got to give him that. So, your first ship, what kind of ship was it?
USS St. Paul. It was a heavy cruiser, CA-73. One of the last of the beautiful ones. She had wooden decks, and we always had some flag on board. You know, when I went aboard, it was a Com 7 fleet had just left, and we picked up Com 1st Fleet when we got back to the States. So we always had an admiral aboard, so it was always very squared away, and the ship was always clean. One bad thing about it, we didn't get to wear dungarees. We always wear undressed whites or, you know, dress whites or blues, whichever the case may be. But
wow. So, I mean, as a signalman, you know, it's our job to be squared away because you're going to be dealing with the brass. So you had to be like ready for inspection all the time, but not that you were being inspected, but you know, that was a policy on my signal bridge. You had to be squared away, always looking sharp and very attentive and very, you know, ready to communicate with the officers and their needs and get things handled. You had to show high professionalism, right? I mean, that was our trade. That stayed. Your tradition was passed on to me. And I initially, cause I was in boot camp and I was going, the recruiter told me, I want to be a Navy SEAL. So he goes, don't worry, go to deck. You can strike. You can be you know, he didn't tell me anything right. You know, he was a fun guy, but he didn't give me the right information. And halfway through, boot camp, the detailer pulls me aside and he says, hey man, you get pretty good ASVAB. Tell you what, if you become a signalman for extra year, we'll give you $3,000 for an SRB. And I said, yeah, okay, $3,000. That's a lot of money. And, I signed up and they sent me to A school and I thought I was going to land airplanes. I had no idea what the signalman was. You know what I mean? I thought that was the guy that works in the flight deck, right? But yeah, it was a great rate. I was in for 6 years. I didn't get as many years as you, but What other types of, duty stations or ships did you get to go on and do while you were in the reserves?
When I first went into the reserves, they put me on the USS. I was attached to a unit on the USS New Orleans, LPH-11. And I was a signalman there, and I went one time. We went up to Akdutra only once on it, and got to hang out with the signal crew, which brought back a lot of good old memories. But all the time we were underway, we were never with any other ships, so I didn't get to really use the rate, keep up with it. And then about a year after that, they transferred me into the COM7 Fleet Unit 111, which was the Admiral's Admiral's Reserve Unit there in Dallas, Texas, where I was staying, where I lived. And their ship was the USS Blue Ridge, LCC 19. And I was attached to that ship for probably the next 10 years that I was with COM7 Fleet Reserves. So I got to do a lot of duty on the Blue Ridge. And I'll tell you, that was close second to being a beautiful and a very nice ship. It was a good ship. I liked it. Had good crew, had good signalmen on there. And I got to get up there and do my signalman rate a few times when I was out on Akdutra with them. But most of the time they would keep me down in the CIC to work with the Admiral staff during my Akdutras.
Was that like a communication ship, the Blue Ridge, like a big comm ship or something like that? I'm trying to remember. The name is familiar. The Blue Ridge, right?
Yeah, I think she's still running. It looked like I guess had at one time been a LPH, a helicopter lander, and had been converted to be a communications. We had antennas and all over that ship, and there was only one place on the fantail for the Admiral's Black Hawk to land. So it was a communications vessel, and that was pretty much it. We weren't a combat vessel.
It was kind of like a floating Pentagon. It just had all the comms.
Pretty much. Lots of it.
No, I've seen pictures of it. I go, man.
They served.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it was nice. Nice berthing spaces. Had a really nice mess deck, and they served really good chow on there. Considering.
That was like the luxury ship. I mean, that probably compared to or maybe the Mercy, one of those floating hospitals, that might be a nice ship, or a tender. But this would be another one in that class of ships. Not like your cruiser, but this would be another. Hey, that's good. That's good duty, right? It's got all the amenities because the brass rides on here, so everything floats to the top. You get all the good stuff, right?
All the good ports. We would hang out in Pattaya Beach, Thailand a lot, and it was just a fun ship. One of the best Akdutras I did was with the Japanese ship Shirani, the Japanese ship Shirani. It was a sister ship to the Blue Ridge. We met them in Yokosuka, Japan, on one of my Akdutras, and sailed with them down the coast of Japan and all the way down to a little island, I guess, called Oahu. And the brass had some deal going on there, but we was up next to the Shirani, and they invited us over, some of us people over, for a dinner. And they wanted one person from each of the departments aboard the Blue Ridge, so they could have the sister person on the Shirani that did his job can eat each other. So I was going to go on there as a signalman. So we all went over, lined up, got off the ship and lined off and marched over to the Shirani's afterbrow. And it was lined, they had Japanese sailors was lined up on both sides of the afterbrow. And we went up the afterbrow and they started clapping for us. And they were lined up all the way down the starboard side of the ship to the fantail. And we walked all the way down the starboard side, and the fantail went in a little hangar there. And they had a little place set up for us to have dinner. And they clapped for us all the way that we went in until we got in there. And that was really something. That was really moving to know that we were that good friendly with Japan, and the sailors were that nice after World War II. Just had went down not too many years ago. But we got to drink.
It's like, good. A sigh of relief, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut in there.
Yeah, I got the signalman. I couldn't communicate with him too much because he didn't speak much English, and I didn't speak much Japanese, but he took me up on the signal bridge, and I had a real hard time getting up that ladder because their ladders is not quite as wide or as big as ours, and those are little guys, and it's pretty small for for Americans. Yeah. But they were very nice.
Little compact. Huh?
I got to eat sushi and drink some sake with the Japanese admiral. Not just me, but everybody that was all the signalmen that was there, sailors. We got to meet him and have a glass with him. So it was a nice thing.
That's pretty nice. So are you in that? Or did they put you as an extra or have you in the background in that movie with John Wayne? Like, is there any, if I watch In Harm's Way? Because I would guess they would use the signalman. I mean, that's always a part of every Navy movie I ever see.
Well, to be honest with you, I used to hang out up there a lot, hoping that maybe we could get in the movie. One day I was off duty and I was down in a wreck, resting and sleeping, and that's the day that they pulled a signalman up there to be in the movie. He was a young guy named Thomas. He was a signalman seaman that they selected, and in the movie, it's just one short scene that he's in. John Wayne and Kirk Douglas is standing up on the bridge, and they're looking out at sea. And there's a signalman there's a sailor. You can't tell who he is because he's in T-shirt right there next to him. He's looking out to sea with the binoculars, and he says, "Captain, there's a fleet of aircraft over Diamond Head." And John Wayne turns around, looks at him, and goes, "Very well." So that was about the extent of what the signalman's got to perform in that movie.
Those were good lines, son. Good job. Just act like you're reading the message board to me. Read the message board. That's your lines. Well, we'll put your lines on the little, message board, right?
I'll tell you a little bit about John Wayne. The carpenters there built a scaffold that from the O2 level all the way up to the O4 level. The signal bridge on the St. Paul was on the O3, and the captain's bridge was on O4. So I guess the Otto Preminger was the director, and he wanted a screenshot from looking onto the ship, and the only way to do that was be off the side of it. So they built that freestanding scaffold all the way up to the fourth O4 level, and put a camera on it, and hoisted up a great big camera and some stage lights, and they were up there shooting the film. But I was standing on the starboard side, kind of eyeballing them, watching them shoot the film, and looking out to sea because the USS Phillips was steaming off the starboard side, and I was trying to keep an eye on her. And I was standing there, and Mr. Wayne stepped up and asked me if he could stand there with me, and I said, "Sure, this is the best spot to see the filming." So we were standing there looking at the Phillips cruising off the side, and they were filming a movie up on the next deck, and Otto Preminger started hollering at the actors. They couldn't seem to get their lines right when they were walking down the catwalk and toward the bridge, and they kept messing up the lines, and the Otto kept hollering, "Cut, cut, cut." After about 12 times, he got real mad and started hollering and cussing. And me and John Wayne turned around, looked up there at him. And me being kind of silly, I didn't know what. I kind of opened my mouth prematurely and said, "Darn, Mr. Wayne, that guy cusses worse than a sailor." And John Wayne kind of looked down at me, and I thought for a minute he was going to knock me on my head, but he kind of laughed and turned around and walked off and went right to this ladder and went up to the next deck where Otto Preminger was, and I talked to him for a second, and then I could hear Otto says, "I'm sorry, Mr. Wayne, I won't do that any longer." So that just showed you how much everybody obeyed him.
Well, I mean, it's like you join the Navy, you're a young man, and all of a sudden you're on the set and you're hanging out with John Wayne, and it's just a surreal experience. It's like, you're in music class, and the next day Elvis is teaching music class. It's just one of those larger than life experiences. I totally understand. I've had a few myself, but nothing like that in the Navy for sure.
Yeah.
Just sitting there and you realize they're just a down to earth guy. And then you see them in the movies and they're bigger than life, right?
Yeah.
And they're just a good person.
Yes. John Wayne.
And he
was kind of bigger in life right there, just standing next to him. He was a super person. He really had a lot of feelings for the enlisted personnel of the military. He really liked us, and that's why he hung out with us a lot. He stayed up the bridge most of the time, and all the other actors, they pretty well stayed down in the bows of the ship. They didn't come up too much. And there was Kirk Douglas and Burgess Meredith, Tom Tyrant, and Carol O'Connor, but we didn't see those unless they were coming up on the bridge to make a scene. But John Wayne stayed up there all the time. If he was off duty, he was still up there watching them film and helping Otto Preminger make decisions.
Wow. So, I mean, how old were you when this was happening? When, you were there with John Wayne? How old?
19. 1964. I guess I was 20. Yeah, about 20.
I'm putting myself in your shoes, just kind of visualizing, right? I'm going, what would I be thinking at 19? I joined the Navy and we're like, huh? You're in the Navy's amazing. What's next? What's next on my next enlistment, right? Are we going on a rock star tour? Who's coming on board? What are we doing? We're going to be Marilyn Monroe's security. What's the next program for me? This Navy is a really cool deal.
You're it.
Was that running through your mind back then, you think? I mean, were you like, oh wow, the Navy just is not what I expected?
Yeah.
I can imagine that.
But being with the Admiral's staff, we got a lot of weird things that go on the ship. Being with the Admirals, going different places and doing different things. So we were used to getting a lot of attention. But when they said John Wayne and Kirk Douglas was coming aboard, that was a different thing. When you first met them, it was pretty hard to keep from grinning ear to ear because these guys were bigger in life. People we grew up, watching on TV and like, that's John Wayne, that's Kirk Douglas. And getting to meet him was just, it was a thrill of a lifetime. And being able to spend the time with him and actually sit and talk and drink coffee with him made me very, very lucky.
I understand that. And you sitting there getting to know him, you're not in Hollywood. It's not like a VIP backstage quick 5 meet and greet, say hello to the star and leave or meet him in a Hollywood premise. You're meeting him where you're in the Navy. And when you're out at sea, all that stardom and stuff just kind of levels off, right? I mean, I'm just guesstimating here. You get to be real to real with each other, right?
Yeah, he talked to us. I mean, that's just like he talked to anybody. He really liked to talk a whole lot about the movie, The Alamo. He was kind of disappointed in it. He lost a lot of money in it. He used to sit there and talk to us about it, and he said he invested a lot of his personal property and stuff to make that movie. He sold some property down in Mexico and took second lien on his house and borrowed against his yacht. He said he just had tons of money invested in it, and it went over budget like 3 times, and they didn't make the money that he anticipated. So he would joke, says, well, Jerry says, I'm doing this movie here for free. I said, what are they paying you for it, Mr. Wayne? He said, I'm going to make $750,000 for this movie, but I owe it all to Paramount for making the Alamo.
Oh, well, I mean, at least you get to enjoy the sea. I bet he really enjoyed it because we know the lure of the sea. We still miss it today. I mean, I live near the ocean. I don't live on it, but I live about 40 minutes away from really good waves. I go there about once a week because I have to. Ever since I'm a signalman, I've been on the mid-watch ever since. You know what I mean? And I have to see the ocean. I really do. I got to check on it, make sure it's still there. And it's kind of kept me from moving like to Texas or to Arizona or somewhere else because I need that ocean. And, I don't know, man. I really like it. You know who I get to meet? And I was sitting there with my ex and I'm looking at TV and I see Clint Eastwood I'm watching his movies. I go, I like Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood and I would get along. I just know what she goes. You'll never meet him. So we broke up, and I call her 3 months later. I go, guess who I'm meeting today? Because I was helping do some filming for a reality show with one of the Oakland Raiders, and we were, at the AT&T Pebble Beach golf course, and we were interviewing all these different celebrities, but Clint Eastwood was the one that we wanted more than anything. And there was this couple that my football player friend knew, and they're like, I'm more your, because they broke up. They're like, you're my friend, not his, or you're my friend, not hers. And the soon to be ex-wife said, listen, I got the hookup for you guys. I'm really good friends. I'm best friends with Clint's wife. I'm going to take care of this. We're like, oh, great. And we went to LA to do something. Oh, we get a phone call. Clint's ready to meet you tomorrow at 3. So we race from LA back to Monterey or Pebble Beach area. And we miss it. We're like, oh crap. But then she calls us, don't worry, I got it rescheduled. So we're there at Pebble Beach Golf Course, and I hadn't done much stuff around celebrity stuff. It's a long journey. I may discuss that in some other podcast, but I bought a camera, and it just took me on a journey. And I'm sitting there going, we're really going to meet him? So we go back the next day, and we don't have press passes. And there's all these cops. I go, just show them your Super Bowl ring. It's like a superpower. So he's showing them the Super Bowl ring. They're like, oh yeah, we love the Raiders. And they just let us walk through. And we get back to Clint. And I'm like, hey, Clint, how are you? Like my long lost friend. And he was like so excited to see me. He didn't want to talk. I'm the camera guy. He didn't want to talk to the interviewer. He wanted to hang out. And he's like, yeah. It's like, yeah. So we just started talking, and, my friend interviews him. And Clint's just shooting the breeze with me, and he wanted to hang out, go get some wine or something, right? My buddy's like, oh, we have to go, Mr. He was just so nervous. We have to go. I was very comfortable with him because I felt like I knew things about him by seeing him on the screen. So I bring that up because I wonder if it was like that meeting John Wayne. You get to know him, and he's what I thought he was, and even better, right? Was that the kind of experience for you?
I never thought he would be that friendly and just want to talk to a signalman that much. He got to know most of our first names, and it was just kind of like he became a friend. Of course, I was, every time I seen him, I try to go up to him, try to talk to him, because he was a great hero to mine. But he liked to stand there and look out and see a lot, and so we'd stand there and talk with him a lot, the other signalman and myself. There's one day that he was up on the 04 level, way up forward of the signal bridge, and I was on the signal bridge, and he was looking out to sea, standing there on the wing, and I had my camera, so I said, I'm going to get a picture of him looking out at sea. So I kind of pulled my camera up to my face, and I guess he caught me out of the side of his eye, and he turned around and waved real big and says, morning, Jerry. And I took a picture, and he says, did you get it? I said, yes, sir. He said, all right. So, that was the kind of a guy he was. He would stop for you at any time, no matter what he was doing, and take a picture with you or stand there and talk to you. He was just a great person.
I think that for him, after being a big star, what I've noticed, because I've dealt with a lot of them, not by like, I think there's people that try to meet stars and do stuff with them. I've never tried, and it just happens. And it's not, instead of doing my podcast about all the stars or people I've met, I'm not a famous movie producer or anything. I'm just a sailor. I wanted to give back to people like you and all my fellow sailors and tell your story, because actors act. We did the real thing. We waved the flags. We did the semaphore. We stood watch. We looked out for bad guys. We reported the spy ships. We kept a sharp watch. And, that was, they want to do movies about stuff that we did. I'm like, well, let me talk to the guys with the real stories. Let me talk to the sailors. But another note is that, celebrities, what they want more than anything after they get all the adulation, they just want to hang out with down to earth, salt of the earth people. Just like they want to be regular again, because it's pretty stressful in life at the top, where you can't just go to the grocery store without getting, smothered by fans, and you're just trying to pick up some chicken at the store, right? So he probably loved hanging out with the signalman. What ports did you get to hit? I mean, when you were in the Navy, what were some of your favorite ports?
Oh, well, we were home ported in Yokosuka, Japan, and we put out to sea, but most of the time we just came back to Yokosuka. We didn't make too many other ports on St. Paul the 4 years I was in there that I could recollect. That was good ones. We was there. I boarded a ship in February of 62, and then July of 62, she come back to the States. So we didn't get to go to, we was supposed to go to Australia, and we were headed on that way down to Australia. And the day before we started our polywog games, we turned around and headed toward Vietnam. So we steamed around the Vietnam and Laos area for about a week, then went back to Yokosuka. Then it wasn't long to that until we come back to the States, stopped at Hawaii, then went on back to San Diego to our home port. But there wasn't too many ports we hit, unfortunately.
So your week in Vietnam, was that at the beginning of the war, or just like being you guys were like a stern warning before everything popped off? I'm just trying to guess the timeline there.
Yeah, I guess we were just there for a show of strength. That was about all I know. We didn't really know too much about what was going on. A signalman didn't, sailors didn't at that time.
Yeah. Well, you didn't have the radio and stuff. I mean, I was in Desert Storm, and my best intelligence, I bought a shortwave radio because I knew I could get BBC. And I would always mess with the guys in Radio Central. I'd go, I bet I know more than you know. And they go, what do you know? And I'd tell them, they're like, damn, you do know more than we know.
Yeah.
And that was, I'm like, it was like a football game. Okay, we're going to come in. We're going to go stealth bombers. We're going to do this. Like, I called it. It was all in my head because you kind of think of the weapons and the machinery almost like a football team, especially being a signalman where you have to memorize Jane's fighting ships and learn about aircrafts and capacities, right? And you have to be able to recognize them on the horizon and the big eyes and tell the captain or whoever what kind of ship that is on the horizon, right?
Right.
Based on the stack. I'm sure it was the same when you were in, right? You guys had to recognize by line of sight?
Yes, sir. That was it. There was pretty much.
You're like, that's a tugboat. Oh, wait, that's a destroyer. I'm sorry. No, that doesn't happen. That's pretty cool. So you get the John Wayne thing, and then you came back to San Diego, and then that's when you get out, after you did that tour?
Well, no, that's when we picked up John Wayne. It wasn't long after that we went up to Seattle. I had more ports in America than I had overseas. We went to Seattle and Portland, Oregon. And then I stayed, I was in the Navy, stayed on till 1965 when I was discharged in April.
Oh, nice.
I stayed on St. Paul. That was my only duty station.
It sounds like a great duty station. I mean, being on a flagship, being in the movies, you get a lot of good, Yokosuka, I don't know much about Yokosuka. I was only in Sasebo. Sasebo was one of the most boring ports I ever went to. I was sitting there and I'm going, this is boring. Let's go somewhere fun. And, I don't know, but where did you grow up again?
I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma, Yukon, Oklahoma. It's a hometown of Garth Brooks, but I can't sing a note, so that tells you it's not in the water.
Well, Oklahoma, got a lot of listeners out there. Got one of my fellow shipmates, actually female shipmate that was on there after I get on the ship. She get on, they put more women on our ship later on. It's like, she listens to it. She loves the podcast, gives her that sense of home, where we all used to be at that one time in our life. Kind of takes you back like you and I are doing right now. We're taking everybody on that journey. But for you, a young guy from Oklahoma, how was it seeing the rest of the world? How did that impact you?
Oh, just unbelievable. It was seeing the world from the perspective I was. It was just amazing. I mean, growing up in Oklahoma in that small town, it was we didn't know a whole lot and didn't see a whole lot. That was the first time I'd ever been out, pretty much out of state, and then end up overseas and see all the beautiful. Well, Japan's just beautiful, and just to be able to see that was amazing. Even though it was about the only place I got to see, but learning about that, and of course being in the Navy, meeting the people from all walks of the life. That was really interesting. And that stuff's has stayed with me the rest of my life. It pretty well made me grow up. The 4 years I was in the Navy, I changed like everybody does. I more or less a little more grown up, a little more focused in life. So when I did go back to the civilian world, I was able to handle a little small town a little bit better.
Oh yeah. You're like, wow, I got skills.
Yeah. Well, I was a signalman.
It definitely.
Go ahead.
It definitely ups your social game, and especially being a signalman. I'm noticing in life later on as I reflect, some of our signalman skills go with us. They carry into the civilian world, and they're very helpful. Have you noticed any of that?
Gosh, no, not really. When I went back to the, I never really had any opportunity. I worked in aircraft a lot when I got out of the Navy. I went back to Oklahoma. About the only place to work around there that paid any money was the aircraft company. So I went to work for the aircraft company and pretty much stayed in the aircraft most of my life. I worked for several different aircraft companies in Oklahoma, and then come down to Texas, and I worked for several aircraft companies there. So, gosh, I can't really think of a time my signalman skills would have been used. Just,
I bring that, the reason I asked that, and not the flashing light or the semaphore, I'm talking more about the ethics and the follow through and the professionalism and being able to deal with management and stuff. I think that translated in business later on for me. And, I did real estate for years. I haven't done it in a long time. I'm actually 100% on the VA. I don't work. So I do the podcast. But when I used to do real estate, I would always answer the call. I would always call you before you called me. I would follow up. I would follow through. I would communicate. And I was helping my friend with something business wise. He just needed some help. I was just helping him out, but I know he was a signalman too. And I was noticing the level of efficiency, the way we handled something. And I was like, wow, this is so much different than the typical civilian I run into. And I'm not talking down on them. I'm just saying we had a higher standard. And I was like, wow, look how fast it flows with a fellow signalman. This guy's on point. And that's what we used to have to be, if you recall, right? It just, it just goes. You're like, wow, this guy's quick. And then, I get out to the civilian world and I'm like, when are these guys going to get it? What the hell? When are these? So a lot of the guys my age, civilians, when I get out, didn't have the structure of the military. So they didn't have the work ethic. And I didn't know what that was. I was too young to understand that. Now that I'm closing in on 50, I'm like, oh, that's why, but, you get out, you're a hard charger and you're like, run. And everybody's walking really slow. You're like, oh, wait a second. What's going on here? Am I going too fast?
Yeah, Lynn, that's totally correct. I recall now one of my first jobs when I got back from the Navy was there at that aircraft company, and we worked 8 hours a day, and then they got behind and they told everybody was going to have to work mandatory 12-hour day shifts, and everybody, all the civilians around there was kind of hee-hawing around, hating it, and I'm going, what's with 12 hours? I mean, we work 12 hours every day in the Navy. That was like nothing to me.
You get that turn to attitude from the Navy, and you get that, hey, I can do it. I'm going to follow through. Because the Navy keeps throwing stuff at you like, hey, it's normal. You got to carry, 800 buckets of 50-gallon paint to the top of the signal bridge. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I'm saying, right? You have to do something that's absolutely ridiculous. You have to do it in record time, and we don't expect anything less out of you. Yes, we know it's impossible. Just get it done. you get used to these things.
Yes, you do.
And it's interesting. You talk about, because this podcast is probably going to be listened to by a lot of fellow signalmen. So I'm speaking on some of that they can relate to, right? I think that, as a signalman, first you're a young guy and you're just trying to do the job. Later, as you develop the craft, you start developing pride in the rate and pride in your semaphore and your flashing light speed and your ability to recognize ships and look out for danger. And, you start feeling that signalman skill set, which is a high standard. And, it's just interesting how that happens. I mean, did you notice that initially? You're like, man, the semaphore is confusing. I got 8 out of 6 of those moves or whatever. You know, I didn't get all those moves he just threw at me. What letter was that? I'm just going to guess. or, huh? You there?
We trained constantly on that ship. The Chief Daffer was our chief there, and he wanted us to be squared away and really show the rest of the fleet that we were the St. Paul and we were the heavy cruiser and admiral staff. So we trained constantly until we got good on flashing light and good on semaphore. So it was he that put a lot of pride in the signalman that was on that ship, and in turn we all felt the pride, and we all kept our uniforms squared away. And when we was on the beach, with those days I still do have the USS St. Paul name on the side of your jumper. So we wanted to look good. When people seen a St. Paul sailor, especially a signalman, we wanted to look sharp. And we did have a lot of pride. That ship always looked clean. There was never a speck of rust on it anywhere. That was always keeping her clean. It was a beautiful, beautiful ship.
And I mean, it
was something to be really
kind of envious
of
your experience. I'm kind of envious of your experience, but I'm also glad I had mine. You know, it's like, I just like seeing all the different ways what life would have been like as a signalman on a different ship, right? You know, what was that guy's experience like? What kind of chow did they have? Or, you know, what kind of ports did they hit? You know what I mean? That's what I always like. And I had a chief that was, they had a picture of him in the Blue Jackets manual. Okay. That's how squared away his uniform was. And his standards I was a very, troublesome youth. So for the first few years, I got like 3 captain's masts, and then I became a 4.0 sailor and started making rank and everything. But, you know, I was in for 6 years. I was like, what was I doing that for? Why did I keep hanging out with those wild guys that I mess cooked with? You know what I mean? And cause for me, when I came in as a signalman, my signal bridge was very top heavy in LPOs. I mean, I was a E1, E2, and everybody else was a E5 and above. And there was like 3 or 4 E5s and a couple E6s and a chief. And then there was me, you know, the whipping post. Okay, buddy, you're the one that's going to the paint locker. That's about 8 decks below. You get to carry all the paint. You get to scrape the rust. And I was very resistant. You know, they would be, hey, you're not painting good. You're not doing that good. I go, I don't want to become a good painter. I want to be a businessman when I get out of the Navy. And, you know, later I got good at all those things, but, yeah, they certainly like had a hard case on their hands. But, when it sunk in, that chief that I resented, I really respect him as a man later in life, even though a lot of guys, when we talk about him on the podcast, he was the write him up king. Oh, your gig line's off. Oh, this is up. Yep. Move your car. But, you know, he was just on every detail. He was basically the Blue Jacket manual following you around. And, you know, it's like, constant level of inspection on everything you were doing, over meticulous. So it wasn't the same experience as yours, but, you know, I can imagine your experience is it's so awesome. It's so great to listen to. I really like that. And, the reserves, you get to go to other ports other than Japan with the reserves, right? You were telling me that you went to a few more places, right?
Yeah, yes. When I was on the Blue Ridge, we got to hit a few different places, and like I said, Pattaya Beach, Thailand was one of them. Osaka, Japan. We hit most of the ports around Japan, but that I can't remember all the names of them, of course. But you know, we never got to the Philippines or none of the other places that I really wanted to go to. Just never did make it. I was wanting so badly to go to Australia. I was on the St. Paul back in the old days, and we didn't get to do that either. So I didn't see a whole lot of different ports, but the ones I did see, you know, I remember and enjoyed that, and I still remember them.
That was a teaser port for us too. They're like, hey man, you're going to go to Australia. We're like, oh great. We're going to Australia. Oh, no, sorry, you're not going to Australia. We decided to give you Malaysia instead. we never got to Australia and we never got to Thailand. And I'm like, okay, but we got Subic. Our ship broke down. We were in Philippines for 3 months. That was a crazy life experience and very cool. Yeah. I mean, and the memories live on, as you hear from all the other sailors. But how was it to being in a reserve as a signalman? How was it to keep up your proficiency and your signal skills? Did you have to work them on yourself, or every day was like, it's kind of like skiing? You haven't skied in 3 years and you like hope you know how to remember how to do it every time you go back to the slope. Was that what it was like to do semaphore and all that?
No, I had my wife. My wife now is very proficient in flashing light and semaphore. When I first went back, when I went back in the reserves, of course, I'd been out for years, and I was a signalman, of course, so I had to learn this before I went on active duty. So I'm going, oh man, it's been so long, I'm so rusty. So what I did, I was get a couple of flashlights, and my wife and I would lay in bed at night and send messages to each other on the bulkhead.
That is so awesome. That's awesome.
She learned. He learned Morse code in under a couple of weeks, and I think it took me like 3 months to get it all down in my head. And that woman picked it up, and she can send and receive light right off. Like, well, that's a sailor's wife.
Like, honey, I'm going to sea to represent us, even though you're better than me. I'm going to walk tall, even though you're secretly way better than I am. No.
Yeah.
But I know the flag bag. You don't know that yet.
Well, yeah. I had my crow on, so I kept telling her I outrate her. So just remember that.
That's pretty awesome. No, your wife, I talked to her today. What a sweetheart. She was very sharp. And, when I was telling her how to do this podcast, and she had the computer skills, and half the time my problem doing a podcast is having somebody who doesn't have computer skills, because I'm 49 and most people like at 45 and above, I don't know how to do that on the computer, because they grew up without them. I mean, we grew up without computers. I had I had more of it in my generation than yours, but you didn't see computers around. They were just that thing that was, in the White House or something, right?
Yeah. They didn't know what they were.
They had them on my ship in Radio Central, and the computing power on a whole ship back then was less than a cell phone. And that's how funny that was. Your Blue Ridge probably was loaded with stuff, though, the latest and greatest. Because when you look that ship up, if anybody Googles it, it's a badass ship.
Yeah, it was quite the ship. CIC, kind of that information center. I worked in that a few times, and that was just like something on the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Those 3 big old TVs up in front, like, you see on the movies. And of course, one of them always played a football game.
It looks like the Niners are doing a really bad job. We're going to have to go in. Lots of missiles at them. No, I'm kidding. But I mean, I just see.
They go out and harpoon them.
That's such a great experience. And so you basically got 20 years, 14 in reserve and 6 years, or excuse me. What did you do? A total of 20, right? 6 and 4? Or
yeah, I did 4 to 4.
That's pretty 16. Nice. And
I did 16.
So what was it like? Okay, you're right. What was it? How was it to make rate in the reserves? Like, did you just have to, you and your wife go tear up the flashlights in the backyard, be ready for like the E5 test or whatever?
Yeah, it was pretty easy. I would go out to on my act duties was when I get my stuff signed off, and making rate in the reserves when I was there was very, very easy. I made it just about every time that I come up to advance. So I advanced to first class petty officer pretty quickly, but I couldn't get any further because it was in the early 90s, and they was already when they was beginning to stand down the Navy, and they weren't rating very many chiefs. So I took the exam for signalman chief 3 times, and I passed it and made pretty good scores, but they never they never did advance enough so I could make chief.
They P&A'd.
Yeah.
They P&A'd you. They did that to me for E5 twice. I passed, not advanced, because you're right. Early 90s, I get out in 93. So early 90s, they were starting to squish our rate. Like the only way you would get promoted to an E5 is if you had a Purple Heart or got hit by, I don't know, what, get half of your leg eaten by a shark and while saving an admiral that was drowning, and did some other heroic feat to get some medals that aren't even listed to get that damn promotion, because they weren't advancing anybody. So I passed it. And it was like, but when I came in, they were giving out SRB bonuses, re-enlistment bonuses in 87. But later, in the close to the 90s, like you said, they're like, okay, Desert Storm's over. By the way, we don't need to promote anybody who wants to get out. And it was like that. And that's kind of the way the Navy works. And now getting a 20-year career out of it's a very hard thing to do. It's not, I've read articles on it,
Yes.
And, you kind of see that.
It was getting that way when I got out. It was very difficult to stay in. I said, no more of the career seaman. That's a thing of the past.
And it's a beautiful career if you think about it. If you did the hard 20, the only thing is, if you're married and you're going out to sea and doing like 20 Westpacks, that's going to be a little rough. You're going to meet a gal that you met at the soda pop shop in 1962. And then you're going to meet her 20 years later. Who are you? Oh, I've been gone. You know what I mean? Columbus has come back from his journey. So, do you have any kids that, sorry.
My wife, when I was with the reserves, I would usually do about 2 Ducras a year, and we'd do them about 24 days each. When I was with Com 7 Fleet, they would allow us to do up to 2 Ducras a year. So, she was very good about, letting me do that, being gone for a couple of weeks at a time. But I really don't know how it would have been if I was deployed for a couple of years from her. I had children. Yeah,
those are like mini cruises. Like they're 2-3 weeks at a time. They're not 6-month deployments, right? I was just trying to clarify what the ACTUTRAs are.
No,
okay. Sorry,
just a couple of weeks. That was all. 21 days was the most I was ever gone. And of course, that seems like a long time when you're, used to being a civilian.
Yeah, it's a long extended cruise. So did any of your kids join the military? That's what I was asking. Or did you push that on them?
No, I have 3 daughters and 1 son, and none of them went in the military. My son was more interested in computers and stuff. So he has a real good job in the computer world right now, and nobody else. I'm the last of the sailors, I guess, in my family.
Well,
hopefully there'll be more come up later.
And maybe they'll make some sailors. You'll have some grandkid sailors come aboard. It's like, my father was a Marine, and he didn't tell me growing up, you have to join the military. He was a Marine officer. He's like, you'll be what you'll be, and we grew up on a military base. And you would think, I had the airborne talking to me like, you should be airborne with us, son, because it was an Army base. And I lived in Italy a long time. I say that on so many podcasts, but I'm telling you as my guest on the show, I did not get that you got to be this, man. But of my high school, I've recently learned that we've had like 3 to 4 generals and 1 admiral come out of my high school that were in my like age group. That's how strong that this is like predetermined destiny was around me. You know what I mean?
I sure did.
And me joining the Navy was like a what the hell, I want to go to California thing. That's all it was. I grew up on bases. I went to Navy bases here and there to play sports against their schools, but the Navy culture was so different than the Army culture. Army culture is, it was more regimented. The Navy was more loosey-goosey back in the 80s. It was more like the disco Navy, as I like to call it. But, I'm not saying it was that way. Not on your ship. It wasn't. But you're hanging out at Naples and there's, soda machines with beer cans in them and a lot of guys with beards. Hey, what's up, buddy? You're like, who are these guys? Pirates? Because I got it, we weren't allowed to have beers. I'm not here to talk smack about anyone that came before me, because I know that the foundation that we had as Signalman came from people like you, and the standards were passed along up to my generation of Signalmen. And that stayed, but they got rid of our rate in 2013. Did you know that? No, 2003. I'm sorry.
Yes.
2003.
Yeah, 2003. Yeah, it was a sad day. I hated to see that. And I think the Navy's kind of suffered over that too. You know, we were the professional lookouts, and they've had several incidences lately in the past few years that if that had signalman up there, I don't think they would have happened. You know, we were good lookouts, correct. And we told them potential dangers.
Yeah,
we could have really things happen.
We could have easily spotted a skyscraper-sized ship coming at us. I mean, that would have been easy. Even at 20 miles away, we would have spotted that son of a gun. And he sure as hell wasn't going to crush up on us at 12 knots from 20 knots away. No. He's coming. He'll be here in 2.5 hours. He's going to hit us. He's about 2.5 hours out. Stay here.
Yeah, I don't understand how I could do that. They can miss that.
I was pissed when I saw that. I was like, what the hell were you? Who's on watch? And then I thought about it. And I've said this before. It's like today with technology, people have cell phones and iPads and laptops, and now they have them out at sea. You know, it used to be in your day, it was probably movies on the mess deck, right?
Yeah.
They'd have before they got TV, before the Blue Ridge on the cruiser was probably movies with a projector.
There was no TV.
Then later they get television. Yeah, no TV. What? The thing ate the film. Damn it. I could just see that. I bet the film got eaten or the bulb burned out once or twice. You know, you see that the film burning up. But later you get TV on the Blue Ridge, and I'm sure you did based on the timeline you're telling me, because I was in. But, you know, now these people they get distracted and they're sucked into the computer, and that their peripheral and their situational awareness has kind of gone to crap. I'm not speaking for everybody, but I know that's probably happened to a lot of people. You know what I mean? And if I'm deducing this right, I wrote something about it. I was like, tell SecNav to call me. I want to tell him what I think. I'm a signalman. I know what the hell the problem is. You know, I posted that all over Facebook. And I put out a podcast that got a lot of listens, and a lot of signalmen told me good job. And I was like, listen, I've caught a mine that was going to hit our ship that was loaded with ammo. To me, I saved my own life and whoever was with me, but I'm not thinking, I'm alive because I was doing my job. So these other people need to think like that. They need to take their values into their own hands. Like, hey man, I'm in charge for me surviving. If you're not going to go up into, somebody tells you, hey, there's a lot of bears up in that woods. Make sure you're armed and, you know, you're paying attention. You're not going to put on your headphones and blast the music. Just walk through there wearing a candy bar necklace, walking through the woods. You know what I mean? I mean, if you did, where's your awareness, right? And you're not paying attention. You're getting too casual. You hear something, you just keep walking towards it. I mean, that's kind of like the same thing of being on watch, like a signal and being squared away.
Correct.
That wouldn't have happened on our watch. We know that. So there was things like the crew is not getting enough sleep. When did we ever get enough sleep? Honestly, do you remember? Because I didn't.
No, that was just part of
that was never a complaint. that was 4 hours, 3.5 hours. One day you might squeeze in 7, but it was up and down, right? I mean, depending, like you do the mid watch, you go hit your rack. And by 7 a.m., oh, we're cleaning the berthing. Oh, don't mess with him. Oh, sorry. I keep kicking your rack with my steel-toed boondocker when I'm cleaning this overhead here. Didn't mean to wake you up 6 times. You know, and then, oh, wait. Hey, guess what? There's more. We get a fire drill. Get up. You know, general quarters. There was never any sleeping in on the cush there. You know, that wasn't happening. So, that's the funny part, man. What do you think some of the favorite things that you take away from your Navy experience, like as a person and looking back? What fond memories? I know John Wayne was awesome, but what other parts of it do you think you really enjoyed about it?
Being at sea, you know, being at sea, standing mid-watch, standing in the nighttime watches might sound funny, but that was always one of my best times. I love being at sea, and I love standing night watches at night. Just see the stars in the sky is unbelievable. Another one when I came, coming back when I was in port, my favorite time to stand watch was the 06 to 0800. So, you're up there when it's dark and it starts getting lighter and lighter, and you can watch the whole bay come alive. People start moving around and watch the sun up. That was another one. Those are the things I'll probably take to my grave with, remembering those beautiful skies at night, sailing through the seas, and it's just wonderful.
You're painting a beautiful picture. I'm totally in line with you on this. I mean, the mid-watch, it was a great watch. And I don't know, sometimes if I was bored, we'd get mischievous. And I remember having infrared goggles, night vision goggles. And somebody's walking up to the signal bridge. And when they walk out of the compartment, their night vision is crap for the first 3 minutes, right? They're pitch black and all they can see is black. Their eyes are absolutely dilated and they're feeling around like somebody who'd been out drinking, trying to find the bulkhead and the railings, trying to work their way to the signal bridge. So I'd be out there swatting their head or whatever, and they're swinging and they can't see me. And it's just funny. That's just, did you too?
We did the same thing. We did the same. I hope there's no officers out there that was on the ship listening to me, but yeah, we did the same thing. They'd have to come up through a hatch on a signal bridge that opened up and you could walk straight over and get to the ladder that went up to the next deck to the bridge for the officers. But the young officers, this is when we were steaming off the coast of Vietnam. They wouldn't wear their night vision goggles, and they'd come out of that hatch and they'd be blind, and they'd be trying to feel their way over to the ladder. And we would be standing there, and when they went by us, we'd kind of put our hand out, kind of tip their hat, but sometimes knock their hat off, and they'd be down there blind trying to find their hat, and then they'd get up and they'd be turned around to know which way to go. So we'd stand there and crack up at them for 30 minutes. That went on for about 2 nights, and then the captain put out a part in the POD, says, whoever's knocking the hats off these officers on the signal bridge, knock it off or you're going to be put on report. So we didn't do it any longer.
I got a good one for you. I'm going to lay and get a signal bridge story. I don't know if I've told it on another podcast or not, but I know that you remember we would have our, whether it's a bosun's punch or, go get some more gig line for me or whatever, was always a prank on the ship of some kind.
The water line.
Go down and get a BT punch. Go down and get the water line. Waiting for the mail buoy. Waiting for the mail buoy. That was a good one.
I look for some water line there.
There's Well, sea bats. You remember sea bats? Was sea bats around in your time?
They
was
were.
that passed on to me from you guys?
But
So we had this, our ship, the first 3 years, it was all male Navy. And then they put 50 women on our ship. And, we get a signalman that was a female. And, she was a little cocky, but it's all good. So we just okay, whatever. We're all petty officers. Go do that. We were just rough on her a little bit. Not harsh, not abusive in any way, but we were just totally military. There was no in between. There was no personality because, first of all, we wanted not to have any sexual harassment. We want to be professional. And, but it didn't leave us from pulling a prank on her because we thought it was funny. So I started early that day. I'm like, listen, we're hitting that longitude and latitude. It's, this is Seabat country. And, you got to be careful because they come out, they'll get onto your neck. They will get on you. And they're aggressive. I'm not saying they'll kill you. It could be painful. It's pretty scary. You don't, yeah, you're full of crap. There's no sea bat. Yeah. There's no sea bats. I go, they come down to flock. They hang out here. They hang up by the clouds. They just come down. And I'm just building this story up all day. You're full of crap. I talked to the people down in the machinist mate said you're full. I said, they don't know nothing. They've never worked on the signal bridge. I'm telling you, I'm an expert on this. So I kept building it up. And, I was on watch with my, fellow SM3 Primka, who's now, a sheriff out in, Reno. And, I think Reno or Carson City. And he's a good boy, good old squared away kid, good guy. And he's a good grown man now, good family guy. But he and I were like, I go, let's get her. We're going to teach her a lesson because she's been smarting off to us. The Seabats are coming. So we called her down. Hey, listen, we need you up on the signal bridge immediately. Get up here now. And it's pitch black. It's that time of night. So we're standing on top. There's a signal bridge. There's a structure, and you can climb up on the side of it and climb on top of the signal bridge. There's a roof, and you're on the ladder. It's like another deck. Okay. So you're standing up on a deck above the people walking along the signal bridge. So she comes out and she's feeling around like a zombie, and we have these wet swabs, and we just just slap her in the back of the head with the swab. Not hard. We just traipse it over her head. And we're going, ree, ree, making weird noises, right? And she starts screaming, ah! And this is the signal bridge. It's right above the bridge. And she runs into the signal bridge, and that phone where I forget what you call, where you crank it. Yeah. It calls up the bridge, the one that you crank up and makes that loud noise. Anyways, that or the squawk box, and she's screaming, Seabats, screaming it down to the bridge. Sigs, what the hell is going on up there? Sigs, calm down, Sigs, what the hell is And she's screaming Seabats for about 3 to 5 minutes, and we were laughing. We're just ready to get busted by whoever's the OD, or, we're just like, come and get us. We're laughing too hard. But, yeah, that was a good one. So that was the Seabats. Oh no. I don't know. Hopefully I didn't cause a phobia. Seabats from since then, right?
Yeah. She don't like seabats.
So you were telling me, you were telling me that you were in touch with another one of your fellow signalmen or shipmates from the ship. Yeah, the other day you were telling me that.
Yes. Shipmate and signalman, Bob Janis. He lives up in New Jersey. He was a signalman with me aboard the St. Paul. He come aboard after we come back from overseas. So I think he come aboard in '63. I'm not real sure, but he was there for a couple of years till I left. Pretty nice young signalman. He did several more deployments to Vietnam than I did. In '66 when he was on there, they did 2 or 3 deployments and did a lot of firing on the line. And I believe the St. Paul was even the ship that fired the last salvo in Vietnam. But
wow, that'd be cool to have him on here. I've had a few Vietnam veterans on. I've had a few veterans on that were on my ship, but I wasn't on auxiliary, so we carried all the an ammo ship, but we were not like the ones firing the big salvos most of the time. You guys had the cooler duty. You guys had the big weapons. Mm-hmm. Heavy cruiser. Now, isn't that borderline almost like just below a battleship pretty much?
Yeah, just below it. Yeah. We had 8-inch weapons. Our guns were 8-inch, was the biggest ones, and I think battleships had 16-inch. But we had 3 turrets of 3 guns each, and the second one was pretty close to the signal bridge. And in those days when we was over there firing inland, they wouldn't allow us to wear any hearing protection because we needed to hear orders and everything. So when those 8-inch rounds went off, it was deafening, and you could even feel the combustion from them up on the signal bridge. And when they fired one time, 72 hours on and off, and we stayed up on a bridge for 72 hours, and we would try to get what sleep we could between when the round was going off, because there's nothing for a signalman to do up there, so just hold our ears, But yeah, it was. Go ahead.
Was that in Vietnam where you guys were firing it off that week that you were up there?
Yeah. Yes. In Vietnam, and then also when we did come back to Hawaii, we went to that what was it? The Bombardment Island. Is that what they call that? Bombers Island. We used to do a lot of shore bombardment there also. So,
wow. Yeah. Do the training and see what it can do, right?
Yeah. We was always training, always firing. If we weren't underway, we were at some island firing, practicing. When we picked the actors from Seattle, and we were on our way to Hawaii, we received orders. I learned this after the fact. Of course, I wasn't aware of the orders at that time, but after I got out several years back, I learned this from one of the officers that when we left Seattle, we received new orders to drop off the actors in Hawaii, steam there very rapidly and drop them off, then proceed to Vietnam and report for duty in the Tonkin Gulf. Well, we didn't. Instead of going to Vietnam, we went from Hawaii back to San Diego, and we started doing lots and lots of shore bombardment practice. And of course, me being a signalman, I just thought that was what we did. But later on, I learned that the admiral, I believe it was Admiral Ramage, wasn't real impressed with the way we were shooting and stuff. So they wanted to make sure that we had the ship in first class condition, and we were able to shoot those guns good before we went back to Vietnam. And then in 1965, I got off the ship, and then I didn't get to go back. So I went home, and they went back in 66, and they, the St. Paul did a real good job over there. But it was probably thanks to that admiral for getting the ship squared away and getting everybody up to their standards of general quarters, because we'd been a flagship for a couple of years and hadn't seen any action since Korea. So the ship was not soft, but just kind of, not combat ready, they thought.
Yeah. A big lag between the action. You got to get tuned up. I mean, definitely. If you get the fastest car on the street, but if you haven't tuned it up in a while, you better make sure it runs if you're going to get in that race. And that makes total sense. But it's interesting. I think my father was probably in and out of the military around the time that you were in. He didn't have to go to Vietnam because he'd already done his time in. And so, yeah, I understand. It's not that you wouldn't have gone. It's like you were serving. You were not obligated to the draft or anything. And I totally understand that. I mean, you did your time. We all did at different times. Some people landed in a war. Some people didn't, right? It's just a question of what time you were serving, but you get the first taste of it, right?
Yeah, we did. Of course, we didn't really know what was going on. I mean, we just did what they wanted to do. I recollect one time having a round hit close to the ship, and it was like, I don't know how far out, maybe 50 yards, 60 yards out, around land. We was shore bombardment and ground land out there, and the captain told us that that was not an incoming round, that was something that had come out of the 8-inch gun that was firing. So we really didn't even know what we were doing there at first. We didn't know anything was going on. They just kind of kept us in the dark. Strange.
Yeah, that's I don't know. I think I had, it's all compartmentalized, We had a little clearance to be signalmen. Sometimes they upgraded us based on what jobs they wanted us to have. You start at confidential. If you get a certain level, they want you to be secret. And then if they want you to be part of different duties, you may become top secret. It just depends, right? And that's all. It's all need to know. So when you're definitely, I can imagine not knowing much, everything being extremely in the admiral's room with the captain and everybody, right? In the XO, because, you're dealing with some big classified heavy duty stuff. You're dealing with headline making stuff, especially on that ship, right? So they're like, yeah, we're just going to shoot guns. Okay. We're shooting guns. How long? I don't know. We're shooting guns. That's all you need to know. But, I had pretty good knowledge of what was going on my ship. I knew what was up, but the XO would come hang out and people would come hang out. Officers spent a lot of time with us. So we were all pretty tight, but we were not the front line, blowing the hell out of the shoreline ship at all. We were dangerous in a different way. You didn't want to hit this ship because it would make Hiroshima look like a firecracker.
Yeah.
So that was the thing. And there's plenty of pirates and bad guys out there. And, people, it's funny because people will say, well, you weren't on this line. I go, listen, we cruised through the minefield. My ops boss conferred with that one. Okay. And I saw mine and we didn't hit it. There's no medals for that, but it's just like, hey, don't hit that mine. Okay, cool. We're turning starboard. That was it, right? And it's like, other than that, when you're out there, people are like, well, you're not up on the shore shooting everybody. I'm like, well, listen, like I have a guy coming on this afternoon. He was on the USS Stark that was hit by missiles that it wasn't because they were in a place they were supposed to be. That guy was just, that shot at him was like inappropriate and whammy, hit that frigate, right? And then there's been that Riverine group that got basically kidnapped or not kidnapped, but captured by the Iranians recently in the Gulf because we didn't know where we were driving. And then there was like, that other ship, the Cole, they got rammed into in a normal port with, an explosively filled, like Liberty boat or fishing boat or speedboat, whatever, nailed the side of the ship and killed a bunch of people there. So the danger is always there. And just like out in, Fallujah or out in Afghanistan, when guys are doing convoy, my friend was a trucker there. He was in the Army first get out. As a trucker, he had to carry weapons. There was, IEDs, there was attacks, there was raids. Just being a truck driver, it's all dangerous. But some guys get that front. I was on the front line.
Yeah, we were
all there, brother. We were all, death is death. You know what I mean? Doesn't matter if you get it jumping out of an airplane or you get it because, you were working as a cook with boilers that were just running too hot that exploded on you. It's the same thing. Mm-hmm. But, definitely.
That's funny. Go ahead.
For sure.
My dad,
go ahead.
I was talking earlier about the movie In Harm's Way, and then we're talking about people being in harm's way now. It was kind of a funny. The last thing my father said to me when I left to go overseas was, "Son, stay out of In Harm's Way." So then 2 years later, made that movie In Harm's Way, and then I said, "Dad, we're always in harm's way." How do you stay out of harm's way? The movie named it.
So your father was in the Army, too, if I recall earlier in our conversation.
He was in when they transferred to the Army to the Army Air Corps. He was stationed here at Fort Sill in Lawton, and then he went into Oklahoma at some little one of the air bases up there. I can't recollect the name of it, but he painted a lot of the insignias on the aircraft in those days. He was quite an artist. And all my life, that's what my father did for his for a living, was paint signs and stuff like that. He was an artist. Mm-hmm. But
that's pretty cool. So he would make like those those faces that were on the airplanes when they're going into battle, like with the teeth and the eyes and all that, like the shark.
Yep, he sure did.
Those different kinds of that artwork that you'd see. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, he was quite an artist.
That stuff's probably. That stuff is probably special. I mean, it's probably collector's items now. It probably is. If you think about it, it's a very unique niche. People are like, what's that? Oh, that's painted. This was this and this. Yeah, you might look into that. Pretty cool stuff.
Yes, sir.
Well, I want to thank you for an awesome podcast and getting to know what it was like to hang out with John Wayne on the Signal Bridge, but also to be a signalman in your era. I mean, I was a signalman later, and then the signalmen later went away.
Yeah,
now they're quartermasters, but they should bring him back.
Yeah.
Is there any other shipmates or anyone you're trying to find out there? Because they may listen to this one day.
Oh, any of the old guys that was on the St. Paul, but we're having a hard time to finding some of those guys that were signalmen. I think we're getting kind of old now, and several of them's already passed on. So Bob Janis, the signalman that was with me up in New Jersey. He's been trying to look for a few too, but it's just hard to find them.
I'll help you guys out. So he lives in New Jersey, or did he also serve on the New Jersey?
No, he served on the St. Paul with me. He lives in New Jersey.
Oh, cool.
I've given him your name and stuff. So I'll get in contact with him again today. He was really impressed with it and probably wants to get with you.
Yeah, I really want to look out for you guys, because, you know, you guys were there guarding the country before I was guarding the country, before this generation is guarding the country. And you only realize how important it was till you get older. And then you go, oh, you get a global view. I mean, when you're a kid, you get like a 10-yard stare. That's what you're looking at down the road. Where's that malt shop? You know, as you get older, you get a little wiser, you get a global view, and you realize how important a deterrent and a protector the Navy is. It's our first line of defense. Always has been. I mean, every other service is just as important in their own right, but the Navy has been, it's a sacred thing. It's been a very special thing. And I have more pride in it as I get older than I did when I was younger, which is really funny. I'm like, why did I change? I used to see those old guys going to the PX, you know, oh, wow, it's a really good deal. I'm saving $5 on these socks. I'm like, why is that old man happy about buying socks at the exchange? And now I'm that guy. Hey, saved on these socks. Awesome. This is when I see some young Coast Guardie or sailor looking at me like, is that old crazy bastard? What's he doing? Let me tell you about my story, son. And he's like, no, it's fine, sir. Have a nice day. I must go. You know, no. Let me tell you about a story. No. I can't handle that. I got to play with my computer phone. Leave me alone. But no, I did have a younger guy on recently. I had Jesse Iwuji. He's a NASCAR driver, and he's a lieutenant and currently still in the Navy in the reserve and driving NASCAR. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
So we get all, yeah. So that's like, what? Who's been on this podcast? I'm going to have all you guys are going to become famous in time. And we're not doing this for our ego. We're just doing this to share our story. And I think there's nothing more attractive, you know, having messed with reality TV and all that. There's nothing like reality, just a stone cold truth and an interesting journey that a guy takes as a young man, and to see where that took him, because there's no other job. There's some jobs like a guy will work at the mill, and then he worked at the mill, and 40 years later, he's still at the mill when he hasn't been 14 miles out of town. And that's where the sailor's journey differs, right? It's odd. Now, you still go to any of the bases or anything? And
that's correct.
Like I do, like the old guy buying socks.
Yeah. No, I hadn't been on a naval base in ages. I'm living here in Lawton now, in Lawton. Well, I live in Medicine Park, right by Lawton, Oklahoma, which there's Fort Base, and that's where I do the VA. I haven't been on a naval base since that's my reserve dues back in, I guess, 1995. I was on a naval base. Probably been a. Pardon me.
I'm trying to do a. Sorry. I'm trying to do a big reunion with this I met a gentleman named James Spears, who's got a huge Facebook group called Salty Dogs. Got like 48,000 members, and he and I have become fast friends. And we want to like just get some big reunions at different parts of the United States, where you can hang out with other veterans and stuff, and you know, people along the same mindset. There's some places that are like, hey, it's all veterans, and everybody's drunk as shit, and you're like, I don't know if this is where I want to hang out today. And there's some places that like regular guys want to have a cup of coffee and just talk about the good old times, or have a barbecue. You know, it just all depends what flavor you're at, you know. But I'm going to invite you on that group on the internet if you see that pop up, and I'm sure the other signalmen are going to love hearing the story. And I appreciate you sharing part of history with me, because you're one of the very few people that get to hang out with John Wayne on the signal bridge. You're one of the only people in history, actually.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Yeah, there wasn't many.
Think about it. Right? I mean, why should he
There's a lot
be the historic one? Why not the signalman?
There's a lot of guys on that ship. I kind of felt bad for them because most of those guys aboard then never got to meet him. You know, he hung out on the signal bridge, but the captain gave pretty good orders to the rest of the ship to everybody stay off the signal bridge because they had a lot of equipment there, cameras, and that's where a lot of the stars were. They didn't want everybody rushing up on the signal bridge and causing a lot of trouble. So a lot of guys, they would never let him come up on the signal bridge, and they never got to meet him. So we were very fortunate that that's where he stayed, and I realize that now.
Well, you got to spend hours with him.
Yeah, we got to know him.
You get to know him. And I had the similar experience to that. I met some rock star that I'm not going to throw his name out there, but I met this guy who was a member of a band that I was like, they were one of my favorite bands growing up. And I hung out with him at a barbecue in my 40s, and we hung out all day. And by the end of the day, he was just a cool, regular guy. But it's funny how that stardom plays in your mind. And John Wayne's a guy you could tell just by looking at him that he loves the military. He's all prideful about his American heritage and everything. He's just a straight up proud American kind of guy. And I could see him. But this will probably make a lot of guys wish they were Signalman at one time.
For the best. Yeah.
Hey, you get a signal wife.
Flash of life.
And she's awesome. And definitely get the computer skills. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.